There is a version of you that nothing can break. Not failure, not betrayal, not loss, not the cruelty of other people, the chaos of the world, or the weight of your own past decisions. That version of you is not a fantasy. It was built, deliberately, methodically, over decades, by men who lived 2,000 years ago, in conditions far harder than any most of us will ever face. Marcus Aurelius governed 20 million people while managing plague, war, betrayal, and the deaths of 5 of his own children. He never once publicly broke. Epictetus was born into slavery, had his leg permanently broken by his master, owned almost nothing, and was considered the freest mind in Rome. Seneca was exiled, nearly executed, forced to write the justification for a murder he knew was wrong, and produced his most powerful philosophy in the years that followed. These were not men born with unbreakable minds. They built them, deliberately, through a set of principles, practices, and disciplines so precise and so powerful that they have survived 2 millennia, and they are still the most effective mental framework ever developed. This is the Stoic blueprint, a complete system for building a mind that cannot be broken, not a mind that does not feel, not a mind that does not suffer, a mind that, regardless of what it feels, regardless of what it suffers, continues to choose. Chapter 1. The Foundation. What cannot be taken? Epictetus began with a question so simple it sounds almost naive. Hevske, what, precisely, is actually yours? Not what you own, not what you have built, not what others think of you, not your reputation, your health, your relationships, or even your memories. All of those can be altered by forces outside you. What is actually yours? His answer was precise. Only 2 things are fully yours: your judgments about events and your deliberate responses to them. Everything else, absolutely everything else, is, in his exact words, not up to us. This distinction is the entire foundation of the Stoic mind, not a metaphor, not a philosophical comfort, a literal operating system. When Marcus Aurelius was told that his most trusted general had declared himself emperor and rebelled, he did not write about the general. He wrote, "It is not that something has happened to me that is bad, but that I have borne it well, and that is a profit to me." He was not denying the betrayal. He was not pretending it did not hurt. He was making a precise distinction that most people never make their entire lives: the difference between what happens to you and what you do with it. These are 2 separate events. The first is not yours. The second always is. Every other principle in the Stoic blueprint rests on this foundation. If you take nothing else from this video, take this: you do not control events. You control only your relationship to them. And that relationship is the only freedom no one can ever reach. The Stoics called this inner territory the citadel. And unlike any external fortress, it had one extraordinary property. It could not be conquered from the outside. It could only be abandoned from within. Chapter 2. The Discipline of Perception. The second pillar of the unbreakable mind is what the Stoics called the discipline of perception. Most human suffering, they argued, does not come from events themselves. It comes from the story we tell ourselves about events. Epictetus was precise about this. He wrote, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. Not the loss, the betrayal, the failure, but what we decide those things mean." 2 people can experience the same loss and have completely different inner realities. Not because their circumstances differ, but because their perception does. The Stoics trained perception deliberately. Every morning, Marcus Aurelius practiced what he called the premeditation of adversity. Before the day began, he mentally rehearsed the difficulties he would likely face, not with dread, but with clear-eyed preparation. He wrote, "Today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, violence, and ill will. But I have seen the beauty in all of these people. They are mine, and I theirs." This is not positive thinking. It is something far more powerful. It is the refusal to be ambushed by reality. When you have already imagined the difficulty, when you have already rehearsed your response, the difficulty, when it arrives, does not shock you. And it is the shock that produces the crack. Perception trained in advance is perception that holds under pressure, and a mind that sees clearly under pressure is a mind that cannot be broken by what it sees. The Stoics had a practice for this. When something provoked them, a person's cruelty, an unexpected setback, a piece of devastating news, they would pause and ask 3 questions before responding. First, is this within my control? Second, is my assessment of this accurate, or is it distorted by fear or anger? Third, what would the best version of me do here? 3 questions, 5 seconds, the entire gap between reaction and response. Chapter 3, The Philosophy of Obstacle. In 177 AD, Marcus Aurelius faced the worst convergence of crises any emperor had faced in a century. The Antonine Plague had killed 5 million Romans. Germanic tribes were pressing from the north. His most trusted general had just declared rebellion. His son, who would one day become the tyrant Commodus, was showing early signs of the character that would eventually undo everything Marcus had built. And in the middle of all of this, in a military tent on the frozen northern frontier, he wrote what became one of the most quoted lines in the history of human thought: "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Read that slowly, because it is not a motivational phrase. It is a precise description of how a Stoic mind processes adversity. Most minds experience an obstacle and move into one of 2 modes: avoidance or resistance. They either retreat from the difficulty or they beat against it with diminishing energy until they collapse. The Stoic mind does something entirely different. It looks at the obstacle and asks, what does this obstacle make possible that would not have been possible without it? The plague that devastated Rome forced Marcus Aurelius to develop administrative systems, medical logistics, and public health policies that had never existed before. The obstacles created the innovations. Seneca's exile, which stripped him of everything, gave him 8 uninterrupted years of philosophical writing. The forced removal of the distraction produced the work that survived 2,000 years. Epictetus's broken leg ended his ability to walk normally for the rest of his life. It also permanently ended any illusion that his freedom depended on his physical condition, and freed him to become the most psychologically liberated philosopher in Rome. In every case, the obstacle did not interrupt the story. It was the most important chapter of it. This is what the Stoics meant by the philosophy of obstacle. Not that difficulty is secretly good, not that pain does not hurt, but that a mind trained in this framework looks at difficulty and sees not a stop sign, but a doorway. And a mind that sees doorways where others see walls cannot be stopped, only redirected. And redirection for the Stoic is not failure, it is the method. Chapter 4, The Practice of Memento Mori. Of all the Stoic practices, memento mori is the one most misunderstood by modern audiences. Translated, it means simply, remember that you will die. The modern mind hears this and recoils. We have built an entire culture around avoiding the thought of death, keeping it at the periphery of consciousness, treating its mention as morbid, its contemplation as unhealthy. The Stoics thought this avoidance was, itself, the source of most human suffering. Marcus Aurelius returned to the theme of death more than almost any other in the Meditations, not in despair, not in fear, with a clarity that he found nowhere else. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That is not a threat. That is a filter. The most powerful filter in the Stoic system. When you hold the reality of your finite time clearly in mind, not occasionally, but as a daily practice, something remarkable happens to your priorities. The petty grievances lose their grip. The need for approval becomes difficult to take seriously. The things you have been putting off with eventually become urgent. The things you have been doing out of fear become obviously not worth the energy." Seneca, who faced actual death multiple times, including a direct order from Nero, wrote to his friend Lucilius, "Let us prepare our minds as if we had come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing." This is the paradox at the heart of memento mori. The mind that genuinely holds death in awareness does not become paralyzed by it. It becomes liberated by it. Because when you know the time is finite, truly know it, not just intellectually, but in your daily practice. You stop spending it on things that do not deserve it, and the things that remain, when everything unworthy has been removed, are the things that constitute a life you will not regret. When Marcus Aurelius lay dying at Vindobona in 1880 AD, his final recorded words were not about his victories, not about his enemies, not about his legacy. He asked his guards, "Go to the rising sun. I am already setting." Not fear, not regret, completion. That is what a mind that has practiced memento mori looks like at the end. Chapter 5. The discipline of action. The third great discipline of the Stoic system, after perception and obstacle, is the discipline of action, and it contains the most counterintuitive principle in the entire Stoic blueprint: act rightly, without needing the right outcome. Most people structure their actions entirely around outcomes. They do the right thing when the right outcome seems likely. They cut corners when it does not. They treat integrity as a strategy rather than as a standard. The Stoics called outcome-dependent integrity a form of weakness, because it means your ethics are conditional, which means under sufficient pressure they will bend. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not indulge in dreams of what you have failed to win, but number the blessings you actually possess, and think how much you would have longed for them if they were not already yours." The action the Stoic takes is not contingent on reward. It is contingent on alignment with virtue. And virtue, once made the standard, does not require external conditions to apply. The practical result of this is extraordinary. A person whose actions are grounded in internal standard rather than external outcome is, by definition, unmanipulable. You cannot threaten their integrity by threatening their outcome, because the integrity was never attached to the outcome. You cannot bribe them with a better result for a compromised action, because the compromise to them is not a version of the action, it is a different action entirely. This is what the Stoics meant by being truly free, not free from consequences, free from the need for consequences to determine your behavior. Chapter 6. The Stoic and Dark Psychology. Modern psychology has spent decades cataloging the tactics used to manipulate human behavior: fear induction, social proof, artificial scarcity, ego exploitation, strategic silence, public humiliation, micro-exclusion. The Stoics identified every single one of these 2,000 years earlier, not as a list of weapons to deploy, but as vulnerabilities to eliminate. Because here is the core insight that modern dark psychology still struggles to articulate clearly. Manipulation only works where there is dependency. Every manipulation tactic targets a specific dependency. Status games target your dependency on recognition. Guilt manipulation targets your dependency on others' approval. Strategic silence targets your dependency on confirmation. Public humiliation targets your dependency on reputation. Remove the dependency, and the tactic loses its grip entirely. This is why the Stoic disciplines are not just philosophical exercises. They are, in the most practical sense, the complete antidote to every form of psychological manipulation. The man who has internalized the foundation that only his judgments and responses are his cannot be manipulated through outcomes because he has released his grip on outcomes. The man who has trained his perception cannot be manipulated through distortion because he sees clearly before he responds. The man who has practiced memento mori cannot be manipulated through fear of loss because he has already held the worst loss, death itself, in clear awareness and found it manageable. And the man who acts from internal standard cannot be manipulated through incentive or threat because neither the incentive nor the threat changes what the right action is. Seneca wrote, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The same is true of psychological immunity. It consists not in being invulnerable, but in having few dependencies. The Stoic system reduces dependencies one by one. Each discipline applied removes another lever until, at the end of the system, there is almost nothing left for the manipulator to reach. Almost nothing, because the Stoics were not inhuman. They felt things, they valued things, they loved people. They simply refused to allow those feelings and values to be weaponized against them by others who had studied how to do exactly that. Chapter 7. Building the Practice. The Stoic blueprint is not a philosophy you read and then possess. It is a practice you build and then inhabit. The difference matters enormously. Most people read Stoic philosophy and feel briefly inspired. Then life applies pressure and the inspiration evaporates. Because inspiration without practice is decoration, not structure. The Stoics built their minds through daily architecture, not occasional reflection. Daily, deliberate, structured practice. Here is the complete daily system. The morning, before you engage with anyone or anything, 5 minutes, 3 questions, written by hand or held in mind. What is within my control today? What is not? And what would the best version of me do in the difficulties that will almost certainly arrive before tonight? Marcus Aurelius did this every day for 19 years, not because he enjoyed it, because he had learned, through the evidence of his own life, that the days he skipped it were the days he was most likely to act from the part of himself that was still asleep. The midday. Once, in the middle of the day, a single pause, one question only. Am I acting right now from reason or from reaction? That question takes 5 seconds to ask. Its effect can change the entire trajectory of the afternoon. Seneca practiced this with obsessive regularity. He called it the examination of the present hour, not the day, not the week, the hour in front of him. Is this hour being spent in alignment with the person I am trying to become? The evening, before sleep, 3 questions, written down. What did I do today that aligned with who I am trying to become? What did I do today that did not? And what will I do differently tomorrow, specifically, not vaguely? These are not 3 questions for self-criticism. The Stoics were explicit about this. The evening review is not punishment, it is calibration, the daily refinement of a mind being built toward a standard. Seneca wrote, "Before you sleep, review your day 3 times. He practiced this every night until the night he died. 3 sessions, morning, midday, evening, each one brief, none of them optional. Over time, weeks, then months, then years, these practices do not just change how you think. They change the architecture of the mind itself. The reflexes shift, the dependencies reduce, the perception clarifies. And one day, not suddenly, but undeniably, you notice that things that once broke you no longer reach you. Not because you became numb, but because you became something else." Chapter 8. The Unbreakable Mind. An unbreakable mind does not look the way most people imagine. It does not look invulnerable. It does not look impervious. It does not look cold or distant or detached from the human experience. It looks like Marcus Aurelius writing honestly about his own failures in a private journal that he never intended anyone to read. It looks like Seneca in his final hours, dictating his last thoughts, not about his enemies, not about the injustice of his death, but about the nature of a good life. It looks like Epictetus, a man with a broken leg and no possessions, teaching a philosophy of freedom so powerful that emperors came to study under him. The unbreakable mind is not the absence of breaking, it is the presence of something stronger than whatever is trying to break it. That something is not talent, it is not natural resilience, it is not luck of circumstance or birth. It is a practice, built daily, refined continuously. Grounded in the simplest and most powerful distinction ever made by human philosophy, the difference between what is up to you and what is not. Everything the Stoics built, every discipline, every practice, every principle in this blueprint flows from that single distinction. Build the foundation, train the perception, use the obstacle, remember the time, act from standard, not from outcome, reduce the dependencies, practice every day. That is the blueprint, 2,000 years old, more relevant today than the day it was written, and available to you, completely, immediately, and without cost, right now. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his final entry in the Meditations, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." If this changed how you see something, share it with one person who needs it. Subscribe to Being Stoic, a new ancient weapon every week.